Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Daily Dose, Conversations with Care. I'm coming to you from my home in Maryland. I'm Danette Zagari-Mass, an attorney at Care and co-host with Edward Mitchell, Care's deputy director, who will be joining us shortly after he finishes Maghrib Salat. If he's not
actually, Danette, I'm here right now.
Great.
You can't see me, can you?
Prayer always comes first, so
Yes.
Maghrib comes a little bit later there. But anyway, if this is your first time joining us, we want you to know that we are here every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm joining you again from my home. I'm the co-host with Edward Mitchell. We designed this program for you as a safe space for our community to come together once a day to hear some of the latest news. Hear from Muslim community members around the country, and we include many of our affiliates nationwide. We also promise you an expert every night. So thank you so much for all of the questions that you've been sending us. We are reading them. We care about them. We value you. And we're trying to source the best experts. Tonight, we're going to have Imam Suhaib Webb, who's going to talk to us about janazas. We also have Afaf Nasher, who is Care's Care New York's executive director, who's going to talk to us about all of the things that have been going on there and what it's like to lead an organization from the epicenter of COVID-19. So again, please continue to send us your questions. Visit us at our website, www.care.com. Subscribe to our news list. Interact with us. We look forward to hearing from you. And thank you. If you keep joining us, we're so glad. Let us know how we're doing. Send us comments. I turn it over.
Also send us questions. Remember, we want to base some of our topics on the questions we receive from you, members of the public. So if you have a topic you want us to address, feel free to send it to us. The topic we're addressing tonight, janazas, funerals, that's partly inspired by questions that we've been getting from members of the public. So if there is some topic you want us to address, a speaker you want us to bring on, please do that. I know for you and me both, Danette, our work has radically changed over the past 2 weeks, not only because we're further apart from each other, but because, CARE is not just a civil rights organization, we're also an advocacy organization. So we've had to shift from just worrying about the typical issues, but also realizing that we have a responsibility and an opportunity to use our platform, our connections around the country, to bring information to people about this crisis, to educate people about what they need to know, both in terms of their health, in terms of the legal impact of all this. You wrote that great article that we discussed last week about broken contracts. And so I think for me, this has, radically changed the work we do. And I assume that's the same for you, Danette. I mean, in ways we did not expect.
Yeah, things are changing. It's gotten extended now until April, the social isolation. I know in my own state in Maryland, our governor just announced a lockdown that just became effective. Actually, it's 8:03. It became effective at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, Virginia as well, right?
We see the country, all the governors struggling, looking for ventilators. So, it's a time that people are feeling, concerns, worries. So we come together to get out of our social isolation, at least at 8 o'clock every night. Remember that CARE is still providing services, mashallah, right. Even though we're finding novel and creative ways to communicate with each other and get the work done, we're very much there for you. Continue to call us, continue to reach out to us.
Islamophobia does not suddenly end in a crisis, right? We still have clients we got to serve, cases to handle, in addition to the work we're doing to try to educate people about how this crisis is impacting our community. So you're absolutely right. I mean, the work continues. It's really double time to some extent. I feel like I've had to speak to you and other people more often than I did before, actually. Not that that's a bad thing, of course.
But alhamdulillah, because of our donor community, we're able to provide these services in this work. So we thank you so much. I think this is a good time to bring on CARE New York's executive director, who's Afaf Nasher. I can't wait to hear about what it's like running a nonprofit organization in the epicenter. Afaf, are you there?
I think they're bringing her on now, and I want to note that, there are well over 20 CARE chapters around the country. We had on Washington, California last week, and, tonight we'll have Afaf from New York, and we plan to have more chapter leaders on as our special guests to highlight what's happening in their community, what they're doing in their community, and I think no one more special and important than Afaf to come on. So, Danette, I know you're going to handle this interview, inshallah. I'm going to pray Maghrib, and then I'll be back for our joint interview with Imam Suhaib.
Leaving me, that's it, hanging me out to dry.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you'll do great.
So I'll let you go if you make dua for me.
I will, inshallah.
Okay,
Afaf, assalamu alaikum. Nice to see you.
Alaikum assalam rahmatullah.
Inshallah.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Take it away.
Thanks. Assalamu alaikum, Afaf. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakum Allah khair for allowing me to be here with you all. Really nice to see you, Sister Dinette. Alhamdulillah for the technology that allows us to see one another even with this pandemic.
I've already introduced you like twice, but I think, mashallah, your reputation also precedes you. You've a native New Yorker, born and raised. Tell us about what it is like. What are you going through? How are you running an organization, providing as many services as you do during a shutdown?
So just a quick correction right there. So I wasn't born in New York. I was actually born in Yemen. I came when I was an infant at 2. So New York is really the only home that I've ever known. I love this place as if it's my only memory of life, and everything that I've done has been local to New York. And we have been an epicenter, unfortunately, to the pandemic. I think it's something like 1/4, maybe 1/3 of all cases right now are in New York. And those numbers have really grown with regards to unfortunately, the amount of deaths, with over 1,200 deaths in New York alone. And those numbers are only growing. There's a lot of unfortunate, I want to say anxiety as we see our hospitals bombarded with people who are sick and don't necessarily know whether or not it's the virus. And it's definitely created a unique set of challenges from an organizational point of view. But like you said, alhamdulillah, Care New York, like many of our sister chapters, have been hard at work. We transitioned very quickly. Look, everything happens real quick in New York. So you've got to transition real quick in New York. It's a New York heartbeat. And what that essentially meant for us is we needed to immediately reach out to our community. We started webinars. We do about 3 to 4 every single week. From 2 weeks ago, one of our first webinars was about people who were stranded all across the world because of the pandemic. Second one was with some of the Muslim doctors in our community, who were really very helpful in letting people understand what the situation is and when they actually need to seek medical attention. We've done things about our incarcerated brothers and sisters who, if that pandemic hits jails, and we know that it has to some degree, you can only imagine what this situation is, because a lot of our community members that are often not remembered, the homeless population, people in shelters, people in jail, in prisons, right? So it's up to civil rights organizations like us who are making sure that we are bringing to the forefront the voices that aren't otherwise going to be heard. So that's certainly one of the ways that we've been working. And that's in addition to everything else, all the litigation work. Hate crime victim just 2 weeks ago called us, was beaten because he wasn't white enough for his neighbor, in front of his children, mind you. So, it's really
during the shutdown?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, this is all happening, and you have to wonder, for example, he was understandably upset when, the city has to balance what it needs to do with regards to the pandemic and arresting people and holding them in jail. So this person got essentially a ticket, and he's supposed to come back and he's out on bail. And it's difficult to have to tell somebody who's a victim of a hate crime, look, the pandemic has set forth, new regulations that everybody has to understand. And this particular assault didn't warrant to the impact, to the level that they would hold him in jail, because they're afraid of what it means to have people in close proximity.
We've heard so many hate crimes coming out of New York this year. I feel like every time I turn around, a violent hate crime against a Muslim is happening.
SubhanAllah, sis. It's happening to sisters like us who wear hijabs, but I would be very remiss if we didn't also point to the fact that a lot of our Asian American brothers and sisters have also been targeted since this pandemic in particular, many of them, right? Just, I believe yesterday, a 50-year-old woman was attacked and needed stitches in her head, right? So this is...
Really?
Yeah, and I think it has to do with the xenophobic rhetoric and the climate that we're living in, where people think that they can attack people who seem to be others in this nation. And this is the time in which we're really coalescing with allies within our community, showing the strength and saying, no, that's not how it goes. Not in New York, not on our watch, not anywhere else. We are strong allies of the Asian American community. We are strong allies to anyone who's marginalized or targeted or victimized by hate in any way. And that's the way it's going to remain.
Not on our watch. I love that. I hear my boss, Nihad Awad, the executive director, founder of CARE. I've heard that come out of his mouth, many times, not on our watch. We are here to seek justice every single day. We don't stop our work for pandemics or for anything, really. CARE never stops going. I heard that you all are putting on, let's see, you're going to do some programming around video surveillance, animated videos. Tell me about that project.
Well, Jazakallah khair for asking. This actually is a big project that we really have been putting an immense amount of time and effort from about a year back, and as incorporated a part of that. This is a part of our ASPNY project. It's the Anti-Surveillance Project of New York. Anyone in New York, especially within the community, knows the type of surveillance that has been focused and targeted on the Muslim community. From our MSAs in colleges, to our Islamic centers, to our Muslim businesses. So we have really been targets of surveillance since post 9/11, right? And it's been an ongoing battle. The NYPD is very formidable in that respect. But we're relentless as well, right? And as a part of this campaign where we really wanted to educate our community, we did a series of 5 animated videos, each taking apart piece by piece. And we released the last one last week. The next one's going to be released this week. So we're emailing people. They'll have the link. They'll be able to watch it. People should also go to the ASPNY website or go to our website at www.care-ny.org. There's a link there too. www.care-ny.org. And from there, you can also link to our ASPNY website, which is a website we specifically built around surveillance issues. So there's a lot going on there with education, with advocacy, and with empowering our folks, inshallah, to sort of combat surveillance in the midst of everything else that's going on in NYC.
And so I guess you're in a position, I mean, we've spoken a little bit about this, the pandemic, which is something you have to focus on. You keep rolling out services, you don't stop despite the pandemic. Actually, you increase services at this time. That's right. So that's the micro, right in front of your face. But then there's all of these long-term issues that you still have to contend with. Think, that telescoping view. And what about the elections? What's going on around them?
So there's 2 that we've really focused on, even with the pandemic, and we've actually done webinars on both. One is around the census, right? So yes, we have to obviously be in the present and take care of our community with regards to the pandemic. But inshallah, with Allah's permission, this pandemic will lift, inshallah. And then with the census, we'll be stuck in 10 years of impact if people forget to fill out their census.
You say that one more time, slow 10 years of impact?
Right, so we can't do that, right? So while inshallah we're looking at what's in front of us, we have to look beyond. And then on April 18th here in New York, we're supposed to have our national primaries. Imagine this, we have now leaders in the White House who are making life and death decisions and doling out trillions of dollars. Those leaders have to be elected through us, the people, and our voices must remain in their ear. And if elections are postponed, as they're saying they may be, well, that's going to impact every single one of us individually and collectively. So we're making sure that people stay informed with regards to elections in the midst of the pandemic, which are now being postponed, and different ways of voting are now being questioned.
So we can't get distracted, right? We have to kind of walk and chew gum, as they say, at the same time. Take care of our health and our needs, but also look towards what comes next, remembering, to be part of be civically engaged and not drop the ball on that. Thank you so much, Sister Afaf, for coming on. Afaf Nasher, Executive Director of CARE New York. Go to their website, check out their projects. They're doing amazing work. We hope to have you again on the show. Hopefully you'll participate through our CARE platform, which is going to be launched soon. It's going to be a total information site, experts, updates. We're going to even have the ticker there at the bottom or somewhere on the website, letting you know where COVID-19 cases are. And you can track it all around the world. So thank you again, Sister Afaf.
Jazakumullah khair. Jazakumullah khair. Keep us in your da'as. Like I said, we are the epicenter, and please support our work, inshallah, in any way that you can. Thank you, Edward and Dinette, and Imam Suhaib Webb. Salam alaikum. Nice to be a part of this panel with you.
All right, Dinette, so now we move on to our final and special guest, Imam Suhaib Webb. He needs no introduction. We want to thank him so much for taking time out of his day to join us on COVID Conversations with Care. Assalamu alaikum, Imam. Can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah. Where are you speaking to us from tonight?
So it's interesting. I'm originally from New York, but 2 weeks ago, because of our baby, my wife and I were worried about getting sick. So we're actually in Maryland.
MashaAllah.
Silver Spring. So,
I would tell you to come over, but you can't.
and then it's 8 o'clock. Nobody can go out right now. So,
Inshallah.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Imam, could I start by asking you, before we talk about Swiss and talk about the main topic of tonight, I was curious, how this crisis impacted your daily ibadah, your daily life. What's your daily routine now? I wonder if there's some inspiration people could take from you or your family, how you guys are managing through this crisis and, what changes it's caused for you.
So I actually work at the ICNYU with Imam Khalid Latif and teach at NYU. So, initially everything on our end was shut down in the sense of problematically, the physical problematic kind of reality. And then my wife and I got really sick in New York. And then of course the initial challenge of getting a test, not knowing what's going on. And then we wanted to come here because my wife has like 81 first cousins, mashallah, in the area. And we wanted at least to be with her parents, but because we were sick, we couldn't come. So we were worried if we got ill. We have a 10-month-old baby.
Yeah.
So we were worried, like if one of us gets sick or both of us get sick, then who's going to take care of our daughter? So finally we made it here. So a lot of the programming at NYU is of course online. And then we amped up on our end at my school, Swiss, just like a lot of services for the community to make sure that, people are served in a certain way. I think we're working harder now than we were before.
Yeah, I know. That's what I feel like too. Danette, I don't know if you feel the same way, Danette. Yeah. And speaking of Swiss, Danette had a question for you about Swiss for that matter.
Yeah, well, 81 cousins, it sounds like, but you have way more than 81 books behind you. So it looks like you stopped at the right place. MashaAllah. So yeah, I'm hearing about Swiss. Please, it's no secret that you have a large following, Imam Suhaib Webb. What is Swiss? Tell us about this. Is it a new project? What kind of things are you hearing from the community? And what are people's questions around the project?
So Swiss has been around for about a year. We launched a beta module of an on-demand school that is almost like Netflix, but for Islamic studies.
Wow.
And we didn't push it hard because we're growing organically. But then when this crisis happened, we decided to jump in and make sure that we're doing free programming for the community. As far as like, we have a class for 13 to 15-year-olds that has 1,000 people registered. We have a class for 16 to 18 years old that has around 600. So we have like yoga, fitness, education, Quran, Deen, you name it.
I need this. How do I get it? I have 3 kids.
So, you go to suhaibwebb.com, the old suhaibwebb.com website, you can find it there. And then our on-demand program is only $10 a month for a whole household. And it's like lesson plans, exams, everything. My bachelor's degree is in education. So this is my education vein kicking out. Yeah.
And have those numbers, or have they increased significantly since the crisis happened? Are you kind of perceiving people looking for, new ways to stay engaged, with the dean, now that we're all locked in our homes? Or are those numbers kind of the same as what they were before?
Most definitely. And I think we have a great board of people who we had a meeting, I think a month and a half ago, and said, let's turn Swiss into like a television station. So that, because we felt, we have a few medical professionals that this unfortunately was going to unfold kind of the way that has happened. Okay. So we kind of were able to be ahead of the game in the sense of making sure that people like didn't feel they lost something. Like if you suddenly had to lose your Islamic studies, well, here's Islamic studies. If you suddenly lost your Muslim fitness program, well, here's your Muslim fitness program. So just trying to think ahead of the game.
Gotcha.
But most definitely, yeah, it's directed everything to being online. And we decided to make it free because we have like our membership is such that we could scale like our paid membership.
Yeah.
And then that allowed us to serve the broader community, all profits were nonprofit, right? So
Alhamdulillah. May Allah reward you. And I mean, I think, it's important that people keep in mind that, the work that so many organizations do, whether it's Swiss, CARE, the Masajid, your local Masajid, relies on donations in the community. And so that work still needs to continue. That work still needs to be paid for. So I would especially encourage people, especially your local community, make sure you're taking care of your masajid, your educational institutions, make sure they can keep going through this crisis. I mean, I've heard, a few too many stories about imams being let go and things of that nature. And so I'm happy
during the crisis.
Yeah. So I'm
Wow.
happy to hear people are still supporting Swiss. And I encourage people to make sure they're doing that with all the Muslim organizations and houses of worship around the country.
And it's a testimony to how awesome our community is, right? That people maintain their commitments, mashallah.
Inshallah. Can we transition to a question? We got one from a doctor over the weekend, and I'm sure that it's shared by many. So considering the respect that we give to the deceased, it's something that we, unfortunately, something that we really need to know all the time and be cognizant of, but the life, right, is we're hyper aware of it right now, I think, during a pandemic.
Right.
And so a lot of people are asking questions with respect to the deceased, the importance of funeral rites. Can you walk us through what are we supposed to do in this situation?
So first and foremost, it's a must to be in touch with public health officials. Because at the end of the day, even in fiqh, we have something called ahlu khibra, where we ask the people who know on an issue. Imams and sheikhs aren't able to give kind of the medical examination needed to make certain calls, right? The analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, we know that the burial of a person is a fardu kifaya, it's a communal obligation. The washing of a person is a communal obligation. But we have a very important principle in Islam that if there is an existential, considerable threat to the people who would perform the act, then that what we call tasqit al-fara'id, that act can be dropped or can be modified. So what we're telling people now is, for example, in classic books of fiqh, you would read that in Islamic law, like you could actually wrap a body like in a plastic during the plague, right? And they would just pour water on the body. They wouldn't touch the body. So there were always these kind of dispensations happening in Islamic law. So in this situation, what we tell people is, ideally, if you have a local janazah kind of organization that does the washing of the body, they should be in contact, or the masjid, with the local hospitals through perhaps a chaplain and local healthcare professionals to find out, like, how dangerous is it for people to be washing people who died? And we pray for the people who lost loved ones. I now have 6 friends who lost people to this disease in New York City.
New York, actually, Sister Afaf is asking us a question right now related to that. She was just on Afaf, Executive Director of Care New York. She said the morgues are overflowing. How long can we be holding bodies?
So we'll get into that as well. So let's maybe, if we can take it kind of step by step. So, well, that would be the first step, right? Again, that's going to fall under the purview of the state. I mean, you can't, if they're allowing you to take the body, are they going to allow anybody to take a body that's died of this virus, or are there certain conditions that they're worried about? Can the virus actually spread? So what we've encouraged people to do, and I think Amjad has a really good fatwa as well, is that work with local health professionals, and then ideally 1 or 2 people should pick up the body. They can take that, they can wash the body if possible. If not, if you can't wash it, you can't wash it. If it's a threat to human life, you can't wash the body, you can't wash the body. If you can wash it in a different way, perhaps wrapping it in plastic, as I talked about earlier, and then pouring water on it, if the hospital can do that for you, that's fine. And then those 2 people would take the body to the graveyard and bury the body without the families, without the community. There is an authentic narration that the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed janazah on someone who had already been prayed on. So after this virus has moved on, then the family and the people can go to the graveyard. Ideally, we wouldn't pray janazah in the graveyard like that, but you have no choice. Again, existential realities create dispensations. There's a beautiful axiom in Islamic law, al-mushaqqat tajribu taysir. Hardship brings about ease. And this is not like something we are purposely trying not to do. Like, this is, again, something beyond our ability, beyond our control. So those people who would take the body out, bury the body, pray the janazah, and then later on the family could go and people could attend and pray the funeral prayer at the graveyard.
Now, Imam, let me ask you this. So let's say, a family, they let 2 people take the body to the graveyard, and the family says, we don't want to wait a month or 2 months or 3 months to perform a janazah prayer. Would it be permissible for them to pray a janazah prayer at their home for their loved one, even though they're not with him, even though it may be, you know, a mother and three sons or something? I mean, is that advisable, permissible? You know, what do they do if that's what they're thinking?
Yeah, and that's sometimes people ask about like the salatul ghaib, right? Like the absentee prayer. So the absentee prayer, I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding. The absentee prayer doesn't mean that you and I missed the janazah. What it means is that nobody prayed on the person.
Okay.
So when did the absentee prayer happen in the life of Sayyidina Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is when Najashi died in Habasha, and there was no one to perform the prayer for him, upon him. So the Prophet prayed for him. So the point is somebody prayed for him. Okay. So as long as someone has prayed on someone, then there is no Salatul Ghaib. Salatul Ghaib happens when nobody's prayed on the person. Okay. Sometimes people can confuse this.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've noticed recently you've had a few prominent Muslims pass away. I know when Muhammad Ali passed away, Muhammad Morsi passed away, you know, there were funeral, you know, janazas for them around the world. And I know there was some dispute about, the appropriateness of that. So
I try to avoid, especially these are sensitive kind of topics,
of course,
right? But, you know, I would probably go back to the people later and say, hey, you know, you can now go, even if they prayed Salatul Ghaib in that way, which is kind of wrong, saying it respectfully. Muhammad Morsi was prayed on. Muhammad Ali was prayed on, so there was no Ghaib. And the sunnah of the Prophet wasn't to do it that way, was to, if he could later go to the actual grave and pray on that person, right? So that's what I would inform them nicely. We need to be in a role of ministers, right? Right now, we don't necessarily need to be lawgivers. We need to be people who facilitate and have compassion and understanding, and then maybe slowly, and maybe it's not the right time to have that conversation.
Yeah. But nonetheless, good to have that kind of frank discussion.
We're getting your question because it's coming upon us, you know, and people they want to know.
No, it's
they
good.
want to know, even in time of grief, you know, are we doing this right? You know, are we, you know, is this right in our deen? So thank you so much for answering those questions. It's very useful.
So another issue, Imam, you know, I mean, a few weeks ago, this is more of an issue when the first masajid started to close down for Jummah. You know, there was some debate, some did, some didn't, but now, at least from what I'm seeing, it doesn't seem like that's a debate at all, that, you know, people have accepted the masajid need to close down. Is that what you're seeing as well? What, you know, how did people, in your community, was it easy for people to get to that point where they recognize the public health necessity? Or, you know, did it take some struggles, some convincing on your part to get your community to realize the necessity of kind of staying over from the masajid for now?
I wrote an article about this, and actually last week I gave a workshop on the janazah stuff, and we're actually planning one now on for healthcare workers. For example, in this situation, healthcare workers can join salah. We should tell them, you can join prayers. Can I shave my beard? You know, if I have to wear, you know, shave to save, right? I think it should be like an axiom, shave to save, you know. I think, of course, under Imam Khalid, we didn't have those kind of optics. We're under kind of the purview of NYU, right? And then, you know, Imam Khalid as a leader is, mashallah, very insightful. But I think the challenge I saw within broader Muslim communities is I don't think they appreciated how problematic this and how infectious this disease is. I think that's still a challenge, right? Not even Muslims. You see mega churches still having their Sunday services. Today, they're saying Liberty University under Jerry Falwell Jr. Now, their students are contracting the coronavirus, right? So I noticed in communities, there was kind of an unawareness, a broader America, right, of the infectious nature of this problem. And then the second thing I noticed is that sometimes young people didn't realize, like, you can be literally a smoking gun praying next to an uncle or an auntie. Right. So that took some time. And then, of course, there were some communities. We saw with Jamaat Tabligh, 250,000 gathered in Pakistan, took the disease to Gaza, who still, and we need to hold these people accountable. You know, I think one of the things that comes out of this experience is who's who, kind of like the Arab Spring, right? Who's who, and not holding them accountable to, like, you know, call out culture and cast people aside, but just hold them accountable for, like, why did you take these positions? When they're counter to Sharia, they're counter to Islamic law, they're counter to the benefits of the community. Like, what was it, the ethos that drove you to take this? And then, you know, maybe these people aren't qualified to be leaders. I mean, that's just the reality of what it is. If you're sending people to harm, you know, maybe your leadership is suspect.
Yeah. May Allah guide us and protect us from causing harm, thinking that we're doing good. Danette, I think you had a great, we talked about, you wanted to address the issue of, anxiety and fear in this time.
Yeah, actually, we did get some questions.
Oh, good.
Imam Suhaib Webb about digital Jummah. You want to know, hey, is there such thing as digital Jummah? Does it count? What should we do if, obviously we can't get to Jummah. It's illegal to go inside the masjid. It's unhealthy to do it right now. What suffices?
Yeah, so I think, again, Dr. Yasser Qadi wrote a good fatwa for the North American Fiqh Council. I'm a member of that. I think that is one where you have kind of a consensus that you can't pray Jummah virtually. You could watch a khutbah, like I do a virtual khutbah every Friday, and then pray Dhuhr thereafter. Some of the scholars are saying if you have enough people, like 81 cousins, you could pray Jummah, at your home during this time. How that plays out with Taraweeh is going to be interesting. Let's see what where scholars take that. That's going to be a discussion to see what happens. But as of now, no, right? So someone should watch a sermon if they want to, and then pray Dhuhr either before or after.
So I was giggling. I think this is we're all converts here. Imam Suhaib Webb, myself, you, Edward.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that.
And So growing up, Sunday church is like when you get really much older. So going to church on TV, sufficed. Some people might think, that translates also to Jummah, but it sounds like
you got to pray Dhuhr, yeah.
You got, yeah. So
Imam, you mentioned Taraweeh. I mean, this is a little off topic, but are you thinking ahead to what you personally are going to do in Ramadan if we are still under lockdown, and how you, what ideas you have to keep the community engaged and make sure that we are getting the benefits of Ramadan, even though it may be very atypical. Have you given any thought to this already?
So I think as far as the fiqh issues, it's going to be important to stick with like the fiqh councils. I think this is an opportunity to kind of strengthen the role and also demand that these fiqh councils continue as they've done to address like real issues. But at Swiss, like we're going to have BYOI, bring your own iftar, which will be like live, and we all have iftar together virtually. We plan to read a part of the Quran every night. Okay. Just read it. So I think those are the ways that we kind of see ourselves kind of virtually. I know ICNYU is going to have some programming as well. I know that a lot of people are still doing their fundraisers, right? They're still doing fundraisers virtually, mashallah, in the month of Ramadan.
Yes. We can't have them in person, but we rely on those funds to do the work that we do. We absolutely cannot provide the services without the donor support. For those who just joined us, again, how do you get to Swiss website? Can you repeat that?
SwahibWeb.com. The old
website, and you'll find it. Okay. So the last thing, we're about run out of time, but we have so many questions for you. It's not fair that we want to have more time, but there's a lot of people are asking us, about their anxiety, which is, natural, normal in a time like this. How are you counseling people? We got some really good advice last Friday. Imam Abdullah Jabir, he came from Atlanta, Georgia. He was on. I'm assuming you're getting these questions. How can you counsel people who are listening right now?
I think any good teacher, imam, content provider who's not trained in those fields is going to have. Sean King told me one time, you should know who you should know who they know. Like if you're really an activist, not only do you know the person, but you know who that person knows. So that you build you scale your work. So my primary job as a teacher, like I teach, right? I'm teaching now basically all day long. But I make sure to be able to have those resources where I can refer people to. So I don't necessarily counsel. I'm not trained in that. I don't have any professional background. I can give people religious answers that I know about, but I make sure, for example, there's something called nasiha.org, which is out of Canada in the United States that does like stuff for young people. People like the Nasiha, and then like the Khalil Center are people that I refer people. So I see myself as being able to refer people. Of course, you don't want to say, hey, go see a therapist, right? You want to say, I'll listen to you, I'll talk to you, I care. And since I care, I feel like this is the best. This is the best, service that I can find you. It's like care. If somebody comes to me with an issue that's, dealing with their civil rights, like, I don't know, but I know who knows. Right. So I think
that's great. We tend to think that, one person can kind of, actually at CARE, we get lots of questions. People will call and ask about family law attorneys and whatnot,
immigration, I mean, everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's good to say, I don't specialize in this, but somebody does.
I know,
especially
but
if you think about every question,
mental
right?
health.
Every question that you've asked me, there are some underpinning foundational Sharia principles, like hardship brings about ease, necessity allows the forbidden in stages. So for example, not being able to pray janazah is not allowed, but now we have no choice, right? But in order for me to, in any of those Sharia axioms to work, there has to be jama'ah. There has to be a group. Umar said, La Islama illa bil jama'ah, right? There's no Islam without group work. So I can't scale those principles if I don't know CARE, if I don't know psychologists, if I don't know mental health folks. If, like, we have a class now, yoga, every Saturday morning. We have a class with Fit Muslima every Sunday morning, who was on Oprah. I can't lead a fitness class, right? So how do I scale Sharia is not to work individually, but is to find people around me who can fill those areas. So it's interesting, your question about anxiety, fear. I think we also need to be careful of content providers who are telling people to be scared of this is a sign of weak iman. That is nonsense. When Allah sent Musa to Fir'aun, he said, Inna nakhaf, we fear him. Allah said, La takhafa, don't be scared. So fear is a very normal emotion. And a lot of us with children trying to explain this to children becomes extremely problematic. So point I'm trying to make is it's okay to have anxiety. It's normal to have, we should all have a little anxiety. And then in order for us to really adequately serve the community and these axioms that I use to answer questions, I have to know people in other fields. So the one-man show kind of approach, the super imam, the super sheikh, it's not going to cut it.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Imam, so we're just out of time. The last thing we want to ask you is, I mean, to be a little selfish, what advice would you share, with organizations like CARE? Civil rights is our focus. It's our, our bread and butter, and our work still continues in this trying time. But at the same time, people's attention is elsewhere. Many of the work that we would normally be able to do depends on being able to connect with people, and that makes it much more difficult. What advice would you generally give civil rights activists, about how to make sure that we are still serving the community during this difficult time, doing our work well, but also changing with the times as we need to? I mean, staying relevant and being helpful and not just, being there, occupying space.
And let's not undervalue, the importance of CARE. I've needed a lawyer. When I came back from Egypt, FBI called me, can we visit you? I was like, well, why do you want to talk to me? Well, how was your time in Egypt? And I contacted CARE, and the lawyer made a phone call, and they never called me back. I couldn't afford, imams can't afford lawyers. I mean, that's a disaster, right? I couldn't afford to pay for a lawyer. So I think, I see, whether it was visiting the young Syrian girl in Pennsylvania, a year or so ago that had been assaulted, and seeing the work of CARE in her home, to my own experience, I think we need to amplify ourselves as a community, the work that CARE does. I think the second challenge is everyone is now changing to this online amplification. Like, I was surprised when I think Afrah was saying that, Afaf, right? Sorry.
Afaf, yeah, Afaf Nasher, yeah.
She was saying people are still getting beat up. I was like, what? I didn't know. I thought everybody was in their house, right? So I think taking a page from someone like Sean King, taking a page from someone like Khaled Beydoun, how their activism has kind of constantly been projected into the online world. I think physical actors, yourself, people like Bassem, Zahra, people who are working, Masih, in CARE, how do you now amplify your work through these online mechanisms? And that's going to need a group of young people that can be around you. And you have that, mashallah, in Atlanta and in Maryland with Zainab, right? You have this group of young people, they know how to do this stuff in their sleep, man.
Yeah.
So I think this is also a time to begin to bring in the younger generation for sustainability planning. What's 20 or 30 years down the road, who's going to be Suhaib, who's going to be CARE, who's going to be, so this is creating relationships. I have a few students now online, like, I didn't know them a week ago. Now I know them. So, that is something I think that in some ways is an opportunity, but it's definitely a challenge.
Alhamdulillah. No, I think that's great. And I think, I think Danette, you and I personally seeing that. I mean, Brother Nihad, I think, has made a very concerted effort to lift up, everyone in our organization, make sure they are getting a chance to shine, to be helpful, to be productive in new ways. And I think this program is part of that. So I think that's great advice. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan, Imam. So it's 8:40. We promised we would end in a timely manner. So we are going to do that, inshallah. Imam, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us tonight. Please stay safe in Solar Spring. Have a good time with your family. May Allah grant you all success and protection. And hopefully get to see some of your cousins, your 81 cousins through your wife's.
Convert gang, bro. Convert gang. Taking over care.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on COVID Conversations with Care. This is our 3rd episode. Again, we'll do this, inshallah, every night, Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock. We will be mixing up our guests, mixing up our hosts. We want to mix up our topics. So if you have a topic you want us to cover, please send us an email, post it in the comments so that we can figure out who would be a good speaker to address those topics you want us to talk about on air, inshallah. Please stay safe. Please stay connected with your family, and remember Allah always. And inshallah, we'll all be able to reconnect in person soon. Danette, you want to close this out?
I just want to say thank you for joining us. Please keep coming back, 8 o'clock. Hopefully we're going to learn together and really just enjoy this time as a community. Get out of our social isolation and really feel the sense of community, even though we're physically separated. That's all.
Alone together. Isn't that the commercial, Alone Together? Alhamdulillah. All right, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Taking over. Okay.